I call to order the regular meeting of the Municipality of Anchorage Assembly for December the 4th, 2012. Madam Clerk, would you do the roll call, please?
Drummond.
Here.
Trainee.
Here.
Honeman.
Here.
Gray Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Hall.
Here.
Johnston. Here. Starr.
Here.
Trombley. Here. Osiander. Flynn. We have Mr. Flynn participating telephonically. Birch.
Here.
Chair Hall, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Ms. Gray Jackson, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? We have before us tonight for approval the minutes of the regular meeting of July the 24th, 2012. Can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any changes or corrections? Any objection to approval? Seeing, hearing none, the minutes stand approved. Mr. Mayor, your report, sir.
Yes, thank you. Just a short report, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder to everyone that Friday we will be presenting the draft legislative programs so that we can brief the Assembly on the input we received from community councils and other sources on capital requests from the state, and we do have some legislative items in there as well. So I think it's at noon on Friday, which means there'll probably be food, so that'll be good. And then just a reminder, the Anchorage International Film Festival is in town. It's really grown into quite a significant event for Anchorage, so hopefully Assembly members will be able to go out and enjoy some of the films and show your support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, have a brief report. I want to begin by thanking Mr. Trainee. He's decided to pull his fireworks ordinance, and he doesn't know how appreciative I am of that.
Does that save you time, Mr. Chairman?
It's going to save us a tremendous amount of time on the 18th, Mr. Trainee.
Maybe if everybody else could pull things, we could get out of here early.
We very well could. And I want to give my sincere congratulations to Miss Elvie Gray Jackson. She was elected to the National League of Cities Board of Directors. Ms. Gray Jackson, we're proud of you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And that concludes my report. I'll begin with Mr. Birch.
No report?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flynn.
No report.
Thank you. Ms. Osiander.
The Assembly Title 21 Committee proposed chapters 1, 2, and 4 are now available on the web, so the public can look over those, and the goal is to get the rest of them up as soon as possible. Folks are working very hard to make that happen.
Thank you, Ms. Osiander. Mr. Trombley.
The Ethics and Elections Committee will meet in January. I have yet to choose a date, but just want to give everybody a heads up that if there's any dates that don't work for committee members, please let me know, and I'll make sure I avoid those times. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Trombley. Mr. Starr.
I have no report.
Thank you. Ms. Johnston.
No report. Thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to start with a little conversation about the National League of Cities Congress of Cities Conference that I had the pleasure of attending last week with Ms. Drummond and Mr. Trainee. Frankly, I wish that more of our colleagues would get involved because it's a definitely worthwhile organization that really helps cities. It's 19,000 cities that are members of this organization, and Anchorage has been a member for 50 years. Some of the things that happened was that we ratified changes to the organization's national municipal policy, and this policy is what's going to guide the organization's federal advocacy with Congress and the administration for the year ahead, which is a really important issue. And in addition to renewing resolutions calling on the federal government to use a balanced approach to address the nation's federal budget deficit, which we know is a big issue, the delegates there also adopted resolutions that support economic growth and job creation in local communities, including comprehensive immigration reform, continued federal investments in water and transportation and infrastructure, regional sustainability, public safety, and broadband deployment. And what I'm going to do is pass out this press release to my colleagues and the administration. And also I have a 4-page handout that addresses the federal legislative update. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But now I'd like to just briefly say I don't have an audit committee report, but I want to remind everyone that Mr. Raskin, our internal auditor, has requested that we submit suggestions for topics for the 2013 audit plan by December 14th. And I just hope that everybody follows through and can submit those plans so that the audit committee can approve the audit plan in time. And I also wanted to mention that I have not forgotten about the Police and Fire Retirement Medical Trust Fund 2-year review audit. We established an ad hoc committee, but we put meeting on hold because everybody had some prior commitments. But in January, we will commence one meeting to start this process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson. Mr. Honeman.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I had a
Mr. Stark.
question specific to Ms. Gray Jackson. Ms. Gray Jackson, as you're now on the board of directors of this AML, or excuse me, the National League of Cities, what I had a question as to how, when you're asked to vote on matters, how do you incorporate the opinions of this body and the city of Anchorage, I guess? Do you see a lot of opportunities to weigh into issues that would have ramifications that would require our consult?
There are lots of issues. Like I just said a few minutes ago, I would love to see all of you get involved in this organization. And now that I'm a member of the board, I could send you a list of all my responsibilities that are pretty darn major. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I understand they're pretty darn major. We all can't fly back to Boston, I don't think. I suppose I could have gone out of personal budget dollars like some, but if there's a mechanism that you could have in terms of a printed committee report or something like that, I guess maybe I just encourage that exchange of information.
Mr. Starr, I really appreciate your comments, and I want to involve this body as much as possible. And now that I'm on the board, I was on the Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee, but now that I'm on the board, I will be able to expand participation of my members on a local level, whether or not you attend. And just for the record, I've said this before, but I say it again, there are 4 meetings every year, and I pay my own way. I don't use tax dollars. Never have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks for that clarification. It wasn't an insinuation. It was just a fact of, I don't know, 11 of us need to fly to Boston. So thank you for that, though.
Mr. Honeman.
First, I want to congratulate Ms. Gray Jackson on her election to the board, and also Mr. Trainey and Ms. Drummond apparently attended. I know Mr. Trainey's on the alumni board.
Right.
And so it's significant that having been a membership in 50 years, I think it's good to have some participation. And I pledge to do a better job of getting involved in the National League of City and issues. And I think I understand where Mr. Starr's going is perhaps maybe we can bring up issues to you, Ms. Gray Jackson, to bring back to the board as well. So I think that's a good idea for dialogue in that way. The Public Safety Committee meeting, next scheduled meeting is next Wednesday, the 12th of December. And at this point, just got a call today, may include a topic on rum runners. There may be a presentation reference some upcoming action for them. So I'm in consult with the chair, and I'm waiting to hear from Mr. Flynn so we can see if we can need to have a meeting reference the rum runners. As you know, has been in the news here of late, possibility of transfer of sale.
Thank you. Ms. Osiander?
I don't know if we've announced that Ms. Johnston is now the president of the Alaska Municipal League, which I think is much appreciated by a lot of us. And don't we have a NACO meeting coming up within the state of Alaska? I wonder if you could announce that, because that's the county version of the National League of Cities, and in the past we've been fairly active in NACO too. So Ms. Johnston, could you clarify what's happening with NACO?
I understand that Anchorage is one of the finalists to have the NACO meeting here. So that will be a big boost for Anchorage, yes.
We're kind of unique in that we're a county too, county and a city. No, thank you.
And you're right, I had been derelict in making the announcement about Ms. Johnston's election. Mr. Trainey,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to tell you, I was down at the conference and ran into these people. They're called See, Click, and Fix. And I want to give it to you because I'd like to see about us getting this system. What it does, it turns all of our constituents that have a smartphone into our eyes and ears. If they see a pothole, they can click on it, and it goes into the city to fix it. When it's then fixed, the color on the map changes. So I was talking to a county that's using this, and it's great because everybody's got, not everybody, a lot of people have smartphones. This turns all of them into the eyes and the ears of this town across all of the area. So let's see about getting this. I think it's a good system. We need to do it. And I, like I told you before, I am on the advisory board now of the National League of Cities. So it was great to see Elvie get elected. It was interesting. She had to go up and, for 2.5 minutes, explain to 15 people why she was the right person to be on the board. And she did an excellent job. And they nominated her, and she got elected. So I was there for when it happened.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too went to National League of Cities last week on my own dime, even though I'm not in either of the liaison positions, and I hope that more of you do get involved. I always learn tons, like Mr. Trainee's smartphone application. We are the largest city in our state, but when you go to a meeting like this, as Ms. Osiander and I learned, when you go to a meeting where 15,000 other school boards or 19,000 other cities across the nation are represented, you learn a whole lot more about how other communities handle all kinds of issues. And you get tours of other cities and see how they do stuff physically. And you learn that we're doing a pretty good job here, but we can always do better. And National League of Cities helps us do that. And I appreciate that the Assembly is a member of the National League of Cities and that we will continue to do that. I brought my program for you, Mr. Chair, to pass it on, and hope that you do attend one of these. I think you'd find them fascinating and well worth the trip to wherever it'll take you.
Thank you, Ms. Drummond. We are now to our addendum to the agenda. I would take a motion to incorporate.
So moved.
Second?
Any objection? Hearing none, I will read the addendum to the agenda into the minutes. We begin with item 9B6, AR 284, a resolution adopting the 2013 legislative program for the municipality of Anchorage. We have F9F6, AO 119, an ordinance to the Anchorage Municipal Assembly submitting to the qualified voters of the municipality of Anchorage at the regular municipal election of April 2, 2013, a ballot proposition to amend Anchorage Municipal Charter, sections 4.01 and 4.02, to require 11 single-member assembly election districts and provide for 3-year terms. That is for public hearing on 12/18/12. We have 9F7, AO120, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code, section 8.75.040, fireworks, to provide for personal use of certain common fireworks on private property without a municipal permit for a limited number of hours in the annual celebration of the new year, subject to distance cleanup and mobile park restriction.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
point of order. Since Mr. Trainee has said that he does not intend to introduce that, maybe you should just skip reading it.
Yet. and I'm done reading it.
Well, if you don't add it, then we don't have to deal with it.
That's correct.
Too late. He'll just pull it and
Okay.
postpone. And we have 7F8, AO121, an ordinance to the Anchorage Municipal Assembly submitting to the qualified voters of the municipality of Anchorage at the regular election of April 2nd, 2013, a ballot proposition to amend Anchorage Municipal Charter, section 6.01, to require an 11-member board selected by district with seats and election districts corresponding to the assembly seats and election districts. That is for public hearing on 12/18/12. We have 9F9, AO122, an ordinance to the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, authorizing submission by Municipal Light and Power of proposed rate changes to the Regulatory Commission of Alaska for public hearing on 12/18/12, accompanied by AM number 711. We have 9F10, AR285, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $2,700,000 as a contribution from the Public Works Department, Maintenance and Operations Division, Area-Wide General Fund 101, approved in the BP 2013 General Government Operating Budget to the Area-Wide General Capital Improvement Program, Fund 401, for infrastructure upgrades to the Emergency Communications Anchorage Area-Wide Radio Network, AWARN system, for public hearing on 12/18/12, accompanied by AM 710. We have 9F11, AR288, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $248,000 to the Area-Wide General Fund 101 in the Public Transportation Department for advertising revenues and bus pass collections for increased cost of fuel expense for the Public Transportation Department and $43,350 of insurance recoveries to the Area-Wide General Fund 101 as a contribution to the Transit Capital Improvement Projects Fund 485, all to the Public Transportation Department for the replacement of a totaled Van Pool vehicle. That is for a public hearing on 12/18/12, accompanied by AM 714. We have one laid on the table, which is a AR with no number, a resolution appropriating $1,936,000 from the MOA Trust Fund Reserve Fund, Fund 731, to the Area-Wide General Fund, Fund 181, and appropriating $609,688 from the Public Finance Fund 191 to the Area-Wide General Fund, Fund 101, for the 2013 General Government Operating Budget, and that is scheduled for public hearing on 12/18/12. That completes incorporating. Any objection to the incorporation of the addendum?
Just to clarify, the public hearing for the last item introduced is for the 18th. It's time sensitive for this year.
12/18.
Great, thank you.
Yes. Any objection to the incorporation? Not a motion to approve the consent agenda? Okay.
Second.
Any items to be pulled? Mr. Trainee.
9F7. For me, please.
9F7. Mr. Drummond, do you have any items?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Hold on a second. The legislative, I'm sorry, I've lost track of where it is. It's on the addendum. Item 9B for Boy 6.
Mr. Horniman.
No items.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Johnston. No, thank you. Mr. Starr.
9 Echo 2.
Mr. Trombley.
9 Alpha 1.
So, Mr. Flynn.
From the addendum, Mr. Chairman, items 9 Foxtrot 6 and 9 Foxtrot 8.
Mr. Birch.
No items.
Thank you. I show that we are pulling 9A1, 9B6, 9F6, 9F7, 9F8, 9E2. Okay. With those items pulled, I would call for a vote on the consent agenda minus the items that we pulled. Any objection to approval? Okay, Mr. Flynn, do you have any objection?
No objection, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. The consent agenda is approved, and we will begin our items on with 9A1, which is AR 273. Mr. Trombley.
Is Ms. Pinkney here?
Could you give me a motion to approve, Mr.
I'm sorry.
Trombley?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, any objection? Seeing, hearing none, this item is approved. Mr. Trombley.
Come on down. It's like a game show. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Darlene Pinkley for her over 30 years of service with the municipality of Anchorage. Whereas Darlene Pinkley began her service with the municipality of Anchorage in 1982 as a recreational specialist and office assistant in the Parks and Recreation Department. And whereas she came to the Department of Health and Human Services in 1990 and worked as a senior office assistant, an office associate, a personal computing technician 2, and as a senior office associate within the Community Health Division. And whereas Darlene continued to rise through the ranks to the executive assistant to the director in 2003, and in 2008 became a grants and contracts administrator and served at the Emergency Operations Center for the Department of Health and Human Services. And whereas Darlene will be greatly missed for her professionalism, her sense of humor, and infectious laugh, her gift of thinking outside the box, her ability to study and become skilled on programs and processes, and share her expertise with others, her willingness to help citizens, co-workers, and municipal partners wherever needed, her positive approach to resolving issues, her amazing attention to details, and her willingness to volunteer for special projects and committees. And whereas she has often said, you don't have to know all the answers, but you know where to find them, which has been reflected in her diligent efforts to enhance communication processes and ultimately help others to get the answers they need to improve their lives and the lives of the public health service. The lives of the people public health serves. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly resolves and recognizes Darlene Pinkley for her over 30 years of service and dedication to the municipality and the citizens of Anchorage, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 4th day of December 2012.
Okay. So I'm Darlene Pinkley, spelled Pinkley. I can't believe it's been over 30 years. Most of the time it's been fun. That's all. Thank you.
We have Mr. Honeman.
Ms. Pinkley, thanks for your years of service to the community and obviously through your different departments and the different levels that you've been at. We're going to miss your years of service, your institutional knowledge, obviously, and I know the folks at Health Service will miss you greatly. So enjoy your retirement. You've earned it. I hope there's a sunnier, warmer climate for at least a little bit, if nothing else, just to visit. So,
if it's nice during the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now have before us item 9B6, AR 284, a resolution adopting the 2013 legislative program for the municipality of Anchorage. And who pulled this?
I did, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Ms. Drummond.
Thank you. I'm in kind of that zone between my service on the Assembly and getting sworn in as a legislator in January. And I really appreciate this legislative program and getting an advanced look at it. I'm sure there are other boo-boos in here, but the one that strikes me is
Yep.
Oh, all right, I'll move to approve.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Drummond.
Okay. On page, let's see, 42 happens to be my house district. The Arts Residential Pavement Rehabilitation Program, it says this one's for the Anchorage Hillside area to the tune of $3 million. And I see that that same description appears in a number of different districts. I didn't have time to look and see which ones are correct and which ones are not. I understand it's a general project, but my question would be, is that $3 million in each district, or is that $3 million shared citywide?
That's shared citywide.
Okay, and when will the streets be identified for that specific work?
Good.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Flynn?
perhaps it's appropriate to consider.
Through the chair, Mr. Drummond. Those arts reclaim projects.
Mr. Thompson, could you just a moment?
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Flynn, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I apologize. I was just saying, given that we have a work session on this very topic on Friday, I think it might be appropriate to move to postpone this item to December 18th so we can work through these items that, like Ms. Drummond is identifying. I'll make that motion.
Any objection?
No.
Seeing, hearing none, we will post this item to December the 18th.
That was our intent, Mr. Chair, so that the work session could, it's a draft at this stage, so.
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah.
We now have before us 9F6. Mr. Move to introduce. I'm sorry.
Second.
I'm sorry. I've got one ahead of me. 9E2. Just one moment.
Mr. Chairman, I propose
Yes,
that
Mr.
we
Starr.
delay the acceptance of this report until the meeting of the 18th.
Second.
And it's prudent to have an overall budget discussion as relates to this. This is some of the discussion as we close out the budget speak. There's other items on the agenda tonight that'll be heard on the 18th, and this is prudent to move forward. So I don't see any flaws in it. I think it's just prudent information to put back in front of the body on the 18th.
Very good. Any objection? Hearing none. We now have before us 9F6. Mr. Birch.
Move to introduce.
Third.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Flynn.
That's all.
Okay. No objection?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know. The third was Mr. Starr. Anything else, Mr. Flynn?
Nothing to add, sir.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Mr. Flynn.
Nothing to add, sir.
Okay, thank you. We now have before us 9F7.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not introducing it. It's just going to die quietly. Let it go.
Okay. Very well.
Just
No
so.
objection? We have now before us 9F8. Mr. Birch.
Move to introduce.
Third.
No objection?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That completes our consent agenda. And what I would like to do now, we're going to break for our dinner break. We have no other bit, but I would like to have all the students come up and introduce themselves if they would quickly or slowly, but please come up and introduce yourselves.
Particularly those students from Service High School, front and center.
Well, everybody from Chugiak was here last week.
Yeah. And we have East High here tonight, I know.
Come on up.
Step to the podium and introduce yourself and which school you're with. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hello, I'm Benjamin Fulo. I go to East and I'm a senior. Is that it?
That's it. Thank you. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Sarah Blumenberg. I'm from Chugiak. I'm a senior.
Mr. Starr is pleased to have you here.
Hi, I'm Kai Kaparos. I'm from Chugiak. Hi, I'm a senior.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, I'm Cassie Hogan. I'm a senior at Service High School.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Weiner, and I go to Service, and I'm a senior.
Hi, I'm Nathan Burns. I go to West, and I'm a senior.
I'm Kendall Hurley. I'm a senior at Service.
I'm James Carey, and I'm from East High.
I'm Ryan Royce, and I'm a senior at East High.
Hi, I'm Marissa Davidson. I'm a senior at East High. Hi, I'm Madison Falk, and I'm a senior from East High.
Hi, I'm Shayla Edmiston, and I go to Chugach.
I'm Christine Gwinner, and I go to Chugach.
Hello, my name is Errol Bueller, and I go to East.
Hello, my name is James Hinton. I go to Chugach High School.
Thank you all for being here. I guess the rest of Chugach High School is here tonight. We're going to break for our dinner. We'll be back at 6 when we can start our regular business. Assembly members take their seats. We'll let it slide this time, Mr. Starr.
We got here early, Mr. Chairman.
That's the plan.
Okay.
We now have before us item 14A, AO number 115, an ordinance of the municipality of Anchorage amending the zoning map and approving the rezoning of R4. Thank you. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all?
Good evening. I'm Michelle Ritter with Dow HKM. I'm the representative for Morrison Auto Group, and I'm in the audience if there's any question about the rezone.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? This item is before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, I see no one in the queue, but my monitor is, I'm not sure, working correctly. Seeing no one, though, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14B, AR 256, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage adopting recommendations to be forwarded to the Anchorage metropolitan area. Thank you. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Really quickly, I think the body already heard my update on this. What this basically does is extends the existing transportation improvement project list, given that the new federal legislation, MAP 21, still has guidelines that have yet to be written, and therefore it's difficult to develop a new tip list, and therefore we're just extending for a year while we get our ducks in a row for the new regulations that are coming down. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Please vote. Mr. Flynn? Oh, Ms. Osiander.
Thank you. I apologize. I didn't call earlier on this. That Driftwood Bay study, have we gotten any clarification on exactly what the scope of that will be? And I don't see anybody here from that. Oh, there you are. Hey, Craig.
Okay. Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, Craig Lyon, I'm the AMATS coordinator for the city. The Driftwood Bay study grew out of the OSNHP. It was one of the study areas in there.
I remember.
Right now, we're not looking at funding it next year because we don't have a match component. So it's going to sit for another year. But it basically was saying there are all sorts of different, there's developable land in there. It's starting to break loose. And what are we going to do to have possible connections throughout that? And so it's a study to look at what the possible connections might be. It's not really any more dialed in than that because it was 2 lines in the OSNHP.
The reason I ask is for at least 20 years, we've been talking about this. I have on my dining room table the Eagle River Valley Sub-District Study that talks about alternatives. And folks down there really thought that the alternative access had been picked up by the greenhouse. So at some point, I think Mr. Starr and I need a little bit more clarification on this one. So if you could put that on your calendar to maybe shoot us an email, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not me. There's a member of the audience that wished to comment on this item, and we kind of rushed through the public hearing.
Please.
Thank you. My name is Julia Peterson, Petersen, and I am the public member and chair of the AMATS Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. An 11-member committee, we assist, advise, and submit recommendations to the AMATS Policy Committee related to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and issues. I'm here tonight on behalf of the BPAC to offer support for the Transportation Improvement Plan Major Amendment Number 4, and specifically the funding level as proposed for transportation enhancements. The BPAC recently submitted a letter to the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee advocating for increased funding. Excerpts from the letter dated November 1st, 2012 read as follows. Dear AMATS Technical Advisory Committee, in accordance with our role to assist, advise, and submit recommendations, we recommend that the AMATS Policy Committee raise funding for TIP Major Amendment Number 4, Transportation Enhancements in 2013-14, from its current amount of $2.5 million to a BPAC proposed amount of $7.5 million. This change would increase the allocation of 4-year non-National Highway System dollars dedicated to transportation enhancements from 10.9% to 14.9%. As such, this would permit the following: completion of all first priority core collision route projects of the Anchorage Bicycle Plan, near completion of the top 20 Anchorage Pedestrian Plan's priority projects, and maintained funding of the Anchorage area-wide trails rehabilitation at the current amount of $500,000. The BPAC was pleased that the Technical Advisory Committee voted at that November 1st meeting to recommend an increase in transportation enhancements funding from $2.5 million to $3.8 million for 2013-14. We especially appreciated that they took into account the BPAC letter, 125 written comments, and 20 in-person public comments, stressing the importance of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure in promoting a more livable, safe, and economically viable Anchorage. While the committee continues to support funding levels closer to the $7.5 million identified in our letter, and believe that an increase would further the goals of the Anchorage pedestrian and bicycle plans, both of which were approved by the Anchorage Assembly, we recognize that the proposed increase from $2.5 to $3.8 million in funding is a step in the right direction. We encourage the Anchorage Assembly to support the Transportation Improvement Plan's Major Amendment Number 4 as it currently stands, and look forward to watching the bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure funded by the plan go from concept to reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anyone else?
Good evening, Anchorage Assembly. My name is Brian Littmans, and I'm the president of Bicycle Commuters of Anchorage, and I don't want to take much of your time. I want you to know that BCA fully supports the TIP Amendment Number 4 and is highly encouraged by the steps the city is taking to address both bicycle and pedestrian safety. This measure for 2013 and 2014 will have big impacts in improving safety for everyone, not just bicyclists and pedestrians, but also motorists as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, in light of that comment, I didn't see anybody else. I had a question for Patrick.
Yes.
Mr. Flynn, can you hear me?
I sure can.
The last two speakers are mentioning an increase in the funding through Amendment Number 4. I don't see that in my packet. Can you tell me where that shows up?
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated, but the long and short of it is there were dollars, basically CMAQ dollars,
4?
That's the general overview.
Well, Mr. Flynn, what I'm looking at on this table, it talks about the bicycle plan project implementation with a total funding amount of $1.1 million. So did you have an amendment that you didn't move into this document?
No.
Talking to Mr. Flynn.
Sorry, the amendment that was referenced occurred at the Technical Advisory Commission level.
Thank you. That's all.
You good? Thank you.
I could clarify that.
All right, see no one else in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion passes 10-1. We now have before the body item 14C, AO number 116, an ordinance to the Anchorage Municipal Assembly providing for a budget appropriation.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This item is before the body for testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Good evening, Tom.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Assembly, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to say that I would like to thank Mr. Starr for bringing this forward, even though I wish it would have been done in order so that you wouldn't have had to reopen the budget process. The public is being hit with utility increases, Obamacare, which is an unknown cost, natural gas increases of unknown proportions, possible Social Security and Medicare tax increases. We're just being nickeled and dimed to death. And this is just another, yeah, we haven't increased a lot of the fees and fines for a long time, but most people haven't had a pay raise in 5 years either. And you know, the public keeps getting hit with increased costs, but the public doesn't get increased money. And I think the Assembly and government in general needs to start looking at all of the things they do. If a small business person went into almost any office that's run by local government, state government, or federal government, a small business person could probably find 25% cuts that they could do, that they would do. You know, with computers, private industry cut out middle management starting in the 80s, but government still hasn't. With fax machines and then email, we said to Representative Young, or I did, back in the 80s, we need to start looking at the post office because cuts need to be made, but they still haven't. And I maintain that small business people could probably, if in mass we really looked at municipal government, we could probably cut $100 million out of the budget. I believe that, sincerely, that it could be done. But government just continues to grow. So this is just a first step, and I would really encourage you to, month after month, look at municipal government and say, where can we cut the fat so that people that are on fixed incomes don't have to get those 1% and 2% and 3% incremental increases to the cost of their budget every month or every year. And, you know, we really need to start looking at things like this and saying, wait a minute, we really shouldn't increase the cost to people. Thank you.
Tom, could you give your name for the record?
Oh, my name's Tom McGrath, McGrath.
Thank you. Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body. Mr. Starr?
I move to approve initially.
Second.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I just want to explain a little bit here. I'd like to ultimately postpone this item until we can collectively take up the other item that was introduced tonight on the 18th, so I'm not trying to confuse anybody. But if we close the public hearing, the idea, again, was to address the fees. And I will say right out of the gate, you know, when we bifurcated, I guess that's the word, or we separated out this question from the budget, the operating budget stuff, I will say the administration, particularly the mayor, said, yeah, I hear you, we get it, let's work together on it. So what you're seeing now is that work together. I think the way the appropriation process works tonight with the other action on there, the reason we have to take it up on the 18th is the funds appropriation can't occur tonight on the solution. So we have a solution. It's just been laid on the table. You'll see it back on the 18th. So matter of a housekeeping item, this item here in front of us will be amended, and then I would like to just vote on it on the 18th. So if I can move the amendment, it was put down as floor amendment number 1.
Yes.
And just basically move the whole thing. And it's a simple thing, really. It deletes everything out of section 1 and 2 with the words, the 104S1 is hereby repealed. That stays. And thank you. The idea for that is to just, basically, we're going to repeal the fee increases. And that was included in the budget. So this action, by doing that, I don't want to vote on it tonight. I think it'll be a yes vote easily come the 18th, but it's part of the bigger discussion that we can have as we go into first quarter review and end of year stuff. It's also why I held the revenue report over, just to be budget savvy and budget aware, and some of it goes to what we just heard, and then also the realization from the mayor that some of this was also included in the very, very early A budget, and that's why we're seeing some of it. So without rambling on, I know we all want to go. It's just it's helpful to get this done right. That's one of the biggest jobs we do is the budget, and I think this does it. So with that, I'd like to move.
I need to take action.
Yeah, I need to take an action on the
Ms. Ostrander, you're in the queue.
I'd like to discuss it, if I can, before we move to postpone it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, frankly, I'm surprised by this because I thought what we were going to do was look at the fees, and some of those fees increases I thought were justifiable, frankly. I would like to see in code the library fees increased, for instance. Well, I don't know if they're increased, but just somewhere where we approve them, rather than it just be done by the library itself. I thought we were going to look at maybe taking down a little bit the transit for the anchor ride costs and the ambulance costs. Those are the only two sections that I really heard opposition from this body. So, frankly, I would like to have some discussion about what the impact would be on the MOA Trust Fund and the Public Finance Fund at some point before I could make an informed decision on this. Mm-hmm. It's really not the way I thought we were going to go. So, Mr. Starr, how do you envision that discussion going, and what led you to go this direction rather than looking specifically at the fees we were complaining about?
Well, I don't know that it's a discussion that's over entirely based on this action. I think you're correct in the fact of modifying it, but it's part of a bigger discussion, I think, on how the year closes out, where we may see increased budget surpluses. If you'll notice the revenue report, we've already collected more in ambulance fees this year than we thought we were going to. That's one revenue stream that's already up. So I think it's a discussion that says, hey, let's wait to see how the year closes out. It's very challenging to raise fees and announce revenue gains and perhaps budget surpluses and that all in the same motion. So my initial action was I didn't particularly enjoy the operating budget having this wound up in it. I think we concur a little bit that let's have the discussion on what's an appropriate ambulance charge. Let's have the discussion on when we should appropriately raise fees. Some of that is a reach out for when do you need more money? When should you raise prices? Just because we haven't done it for 5 years doesn't mean it's a good reason to raise them. So this matter here, and I guess when you ask the second question of when should we talk about them, I think it's more appropriate to talk about the 18th. The trust fund appropriation isn't that per se. That's what we did at the end of the operating budget actions 2 weeks ago. That's where we put the money in for a placeholder. So we're not raiding the trust. It's where we stored the money for the interim. And I think that's the discussion of where we come out. Could a simple matter been say, hey, let's just exchange fund balance surpluses for the fee increase? Perhaps that would have been another way to do it, but it's not as clear, partly because you don't know the exact fund balances. In the accounts that are proposed to be discussed on the 18th, we know the balances in them. So I think if you want to rethink the fees and the fines and the negotiated items, this is being postponed, I think, for a broader discussion on what I package as a solution for it.
Okay. Well, the way my memory of the discussion of those fees is it wasn't all just the rationale given that, well, we hadn't looked at it in a while. There was some that it seemed to me pretty justifiable that we looked at and approved. So I would personally far rather delve into the fees in a little more depth rather than just saying, let's not do any of them. So will there be an opportunity to do that? I guess at that point I better vote no on this then.
Yeah. No, we're not going to vote on this till the 18th.
All right.
Mr. Sullivan?
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to kind of further the discussion, the the proposal that was brought forth tonight that will be taken up on the 18th, generally we support because it uses monies that we know are available now rather than what we felt was the poor policy of using fund balance from the future when you really don't know. You can guesstimate that there will be or won't be, but just as a policy, it's always a good idea to use known monies for budgets. So the use of the trust fund money, keep in mind that money went into the trust fund reserve, which is not the trust fund itself. It's that separate account that the Assembly can access simply by a vote, while the trust fund itself can only be accessed by a vote of the people other than the earnings. So it was a good place to park the money while we sorted this out. And Ms. Osiander, to your point, I agree. I think some of the fees and fines were certainly justified, and I guess my thought is that first quarter when we will know what the fund balances are, I think we'll probably work that month ahead of time and really put forth maybe a new ordinance on fees and fines that really narrows down the ones that we think are, I mean, again, as Mr. Starr said, the original one was when we were looking at a $30 million deficit, and now that we are not looking at that, I think we should revise it and bring back to you ones that we think really are justified and have a good work session on it.
Okay, well, I really applaud the work that you're doing to make sure that all of those are approved by the Assembly before they're set.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that, I think, was a hole that needed to be filled. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Sullivan. Mr. Trini.
Just, Mr. Starr, I think the 18th is the time to deal with this, so I appreciate that. And Debbie, thank you for bringing up that, because we need to look at each one of those increases rather than accept them in mass. We need to look at each one of them. Because ultimately, we're going to be held responsible by our constituents for how we vote on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Starr.
Mr. Starr?
Well, again, I want to be clear, that's not what's going to happen on the 18th. I'm not going to pick each one of those fees and go through the 180-plus fees that are supposed to be adjusted. That's not the expectation I want to leave with that comment. I think the idea is, as the mayor said, you know, let's step back from it a little bit. And if we needed the money to balance the budget, then I wouldn't be speaking like this. But I think there's a time to step back, and that's really where it's at. So I think the line by line by the fee is a bigger discussion than we want to have on the 18th. So the idea is set them aside. Let's give the public an at ease. Most of these, as you recognize, and Ms. Osiander, the reason it's sort of timely is that they were all going to go into effect, and some of them already would have been into effect. And so I think the idea that the fare box fees hit the public January 1 and some of the other restaurant inspection fees, I think it's just time to stand that down for a little while. So we can debate more on the 18th, but the expectation isn't that I'm going to go, I'm not personally, if somebody else wants to do it and reintroduce a fees increase, that's entirely their prerogative. But this would be how we would in quote, balance the budget through the action items submitted tonight. And of course, to repeal it, the mayor's specifically addressing the unreserved fund balance language. That's the item that's in front of us tonight, and we've agreed that that's not the best way to do it. So partly what I'm trying to do is undo what we made sausage with on the fly, and a lot of speak about it, but it's probably not good policy to appropriate directly out of an unreserved fund balance that hasn't closed out the year. So anyhow, thanks to the administration for helping us get through it. Should be able to do that on the 18th.
Okay, I would like to at this point, Mr. Trini, I know you're in the queue. Okay, well, I would, we've got an amendment on the floor that I'd like to action on. Any comment or any on the amendment itself? Seeing, hearing none, please vote on the amendment. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That amendment carries unanimously. Did you have another one, Mr. Starr?
Only a move to postpone the item in front of us as amended through to the 18th of December.
Any objection? Hearing none, this item will be postponed until December the 18th. That concludes our items of business. No special orders or unfinished agenda. Audience participation. Anyone to testify from the audience tonight? Anyone at all?
My name's Darrell Lanzon. I'm a concerned citizen. I sent, I think, 11 of you an email again today. I would like to thank Ms. Jackson and Mr. Trombley for actually acknowledging that they received an email from a concerned citizen about a very important public health and public safety and civil rights issue. I thank you for doing your job and acknowledging that. The rest of you, I sent you that email again today just to be sure that you got it. It's regarding fluoridation and water fluoridation, which you guys have approved to do. People ask for information. Before, a while back, you might have remember me mentioning a Harvard study, credible evidence, saying negative things about fluoridation. I presented you guys with a Harvard study, both in its form that it was studied and on a government website, saying pretty clearly, I don't know if any of you had the courage to read it, saying pretty clearly that water fluoridation lowers IQ. We have kids here tonight. I love kids, and that's why I'm here. It affects them the most because they're developing the most. It affects adults as well. It builds up in your body over time. You know, you guys have heard the spiel from me before and others. I included in that email a 5-minute long video from a doctor from the National Cancer Institute, a very well-known and very respected doctor. I don't know if anybody took the 5 minutes to watch that, but it's pretty clear. We played it in a Public Safety Committee meeting on the 14th. We couldn't hear it very well, so I included it and I sent it to everybody that was at that meeting as well. The bottom line is here is the science is there. Fluoridation is poison. Fluoridation is mass murder. Fluoridation increases cancer across the board. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, alien, child, gay, straight, or anything else. It does not matter. It crosses every single line. Rich people that drink fluoridated water are affected negatively just as poor people that drink fluoridated water. It does not help your teeth. It is a lie that has been perpetuated for years and years. It's time to end water fluoridation. Please do the right thing. Any questions?
I have no one in the queue. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none. Move to adjourn. Do I have a second? We are adjourned.